Okay, Mackenzie, we are watching Ratatouille, Pixar film that made me very hungry, honestly,
Oh my god,
watching
yeah.
this. And Anthony Bourdain actually said it was his favorite movie about food. Like, I feel like this and maybe Chef is probably up there too, all about
Mm.
food trucks. But with that in mind, your final meal, you get to choose what's going to be your last meal and testament.
It's a meal and testament. Um, God, that's so hard. And I had no time to think about this.
Sorry.
I feel like I would overorder, first of all. Like, I think
Go
everybody
big.
does, right? Like, isn't
Go
that like
big, then go home.
yeah,
Yeah.
good for real. So I would definitely overorder. I know there would have to be French fries involved, which I
Hell yeah.
think are maybe my favorite food, like if I really had to
What are you
pick.
going, like, waffle fries or, like, crinkle cut, or what kind of fries are you imagining
Oh my
here?
god, that's such a great question.
Alright, we're getting deep.
Um I tend to like kind of a classic fry, but not too thick.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of a local example that you would know, but it used to be like they're not as good now, but like Black Sheep Lodge used to have like the perfect fries, I thought.
Okay.
And Clark's has the most wonderfully flavored fries, but they're too thin. They're too shoestringy,
So
like they're
you're not a
very hard to
shoestring
eat.
girl, I get it, okay.
Mm-mm, too thin, too thin. Yeah.
Okay, so you
So
got
a
your
little bit
french
thicker.
fries.
Mhm.
What else are you adding to this plate?
Okay, so I was thinking about I know I'm skipping around, but probably cheesecake for sure. Like a New York style classic cheesecake.
Yeah,
Gotta
yeah.
have that for sure, for sure. But
Nice.
then other than that, it'd be hard to pick because it's like it would be like genre-esque for me. Like my favorite genres are Italian and Indian and seafood. So
I've
like
never heard somebody use the word genre for food. I hear,
I
like,
don't
cuisine, but I think you just
well
invented a
that's
new thing, it's awesome. My favorite genre of
this is a
food is
film
Italian.
podcast. We're gonna make it filmy if we can. So
Very true.
But
Uh
yeah, something in those like, I would pick probably something from each of those, to be honest. Yeah, some dish in each of those
So
little
you're, like,
genres.
going all out, sort of like a
You said
all-you-can-eat
my
buffet of
last
different
meal.
I mean, that's fair, I didn't put any rules on it,
We're
yeah.
gonna do it up. What
There's a
about
thing
you?
where, like, if you're on death row and you get a last meal, could you just keep eating forever? Is that a trick that can happen?
I
I
mean,
think
I think that's the thing is they overorder and they eat until they burst, right? Isn't that how it happens? I think that's how
that's
it happens.
For
Uh,
me, I'm just gonna keep it simple. I've always just been a big
wow.
burger guy. Like,
Oh, love a
I love
burger.
a good bacon cheeseburger, you know? It's hard to mess that up, just
How have
medium.
we not talked about this? Have I told you about the burger bracket? I need to give you all my burger recs.
You have a burger bracket?
My group of friends did a 3-year burger bracket in Austin for
Okay.
local burger places, not chains, local burger places. And we went every single week for almost literally 64 places, bracket formation, advanced round by round to pick the best burger in Austin. And like we have a bunch of them have closed transparently because this was a hot minute ago, but some of them are still open, including the winner, which was Hopfields.
Were you testing monthly for, like, cholesterol levels and blood pressure and all this stuff, or no?
Super was not, and I think that's for the best because we would have probably all stopped, but,
Uh,
yeah, and that was the other rule was, like, they had to be open on Thursdays, and they had to serve beer because we were all getting, like, a burger and a beer every week.
okay.
So, yeah, I have a lot of burger recs for you.
I think that's a great play. I wish I had learned about that before I was almost 40, when I still had
Mm.
metabolism. That sounds great.
Yeah, this was a hot minute ago, to be fair. My body maybe not wouldn't love that now. Welcome back to We Drink and We Watch Things. I'm Mackenzie.
I'm Lamar, and I just took a big swallow.
I'm sorry. You were,
It's
like, off
okay.
screen, so I couldn't
It's
tell.
okay.
Here, I'm gonna
I was
mark it for
rushing.
you.
No, don't even. Let's just roll. Yeah,
Oh, you guys got to hear him chug right out of the
we
gate.
have
Alright.
fun.
Well, okay, so this month we are celebrating, as you all know, AniMay, and this was
Mhm.
our last entry, and we had to include a Pixar.
Yeah.
So, we're closing it out with Ratatouille.
Oh boy, my first time watching it. So
Which, like, is mine I know you told me that last time, but it still breaks my brain every time. That's
I think I've
awesome.
missed a lot of. It took me a while to realize that animated pictures could be fun for adults too, and now I'm,
Yeah.
always, but
Yeah.
I still feel like a lot of them fall through the cracks. You know that I just saw Zootopia a couple months ago.
Mhm.
It took me forever to see Inside Out, and there's still so I haven't seen Cars. I've never seen Cars, so
You know what's funny is I just recently saw Cars, like, a year or 2 ago, and that was a big one. So I agree. I think some fall through the cracks, like, the really big ones
mhm.
I think I've seen, but in general, I think they can fall through the cracks, but they're good. They're so fun,
Yeah,
including this one. So,
yes.
anyway, we're gonna get into it, but first, what are we drinking?
Well, I followed the spirit of this motion picture and I put myself in Linguini's shoes and I pretended like there was a rat controlling my hair at my in my kitchen bar and just grabbed everything and was just,
Mhm.
making a little stew or a soup like they do in this. So, this has got white rum, spiced rum, Cointreau, lemon and lime juice, peach and strawberry puree and some cranberry seltzer water in it. And I guess we're going to call it the rat's tail.
Oh
Tail, like
my
almost like a cocktail, but the rat's tail. And I want to say it looks like vomit, but it tastes like Fruit Loops. So
oh my god.
you can see like how, yeah,
Oh, it's so pretty. Okay, wait. Rat's tail, Tale or Tail?
Tail. Yeah,
Okay, got it. Wow,
yeah.
that is a
No.
choice. All right.
How about you? What are you drinking? I'm gonna have a headache tomorrow for
I was
sure
gonna
from
say
all the
you're gonna
sugar. Yeah,
regret this, but
yeah.
I'm here for it. I'm having some vino because I felt like I would stay in the spirit of this film as well. And as you know, I went out special to purchase this vino. It is a French Bordeaux.
Mm,
And I mean, not like a super fancy one because we're on a budget on the pod, but it is pretty delish. So cheers.
cheers.
All right, homies, we're going to get through the basics. And something we've noticed, Lamar and I talked about this last week, is like we go on a lot of sidebars on the basics because we get very excited about all the
Yeah.
people. And it takes a little longer than we intend. So we're going to
Sometimes
try.
it's a 60-minute episode and we don't get to the movie until like 35 minutes in. So we're gonna do
Which
better.
we've realized is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
But hey, it's we must be covering some good movies with some good actors, I think, because that's
And
how
I
that
think
happens.
it'll get shorter as time goes on because we're going to cover the same actors that have been in previous stuff, so we don't have to give
Mhm.
as many interesting factoids and stuff. But yeah, we're going to try to start scaling back on that a little
We're
bit.
gonna rate it in a little, even though we have a
Yeah.
lot of interesting factoids about these people today, but whatever.
Hmm.
So we're gonna try to blow through this. So here we go. Director Brad Bird, who I'm sure you all have heard his name, even if you don't recall.
Yeah.
Incredibles, Iron
Hmm.
Giant, and
Hmm.
a fun one that I think is the anomaly here: Mission Impossible Ghost
Ghost
Protocol.
Protocol. Just one of them. He was like, let me give this a try.
Let me
I'll go
just
back to animation.
let me just do one. I think the other director of the Mission Impossibles was sick that day, is what it was. But anyway, yeah. So he's our director here today, but he's also one of the writers, which checks out because he has a lot of history of writing some animated films and Pixar films as well. So it makes a lot of sense. We've also got Jan Pinkava. I hope that's how we say it, and he's the story guy. Mostly has done a lot of shorts, including Jerry's Game. Which have you ever seen that short?
Yeah, the chess one. I forget. Was that before Bug's Life? It was before one of the other Pixar ones, right? I
Yeah, it was, and
forget
it's
which
so
movie.
good. It's so hilarious and cute. Anyway, that was him. Love it.
I feel like this guy though, because he's just essentially this is a one-off that he's just an animator or like an idea guy. And so I feel like he's
Mhm.
just hanging out in the cafeteria at Pixar. And he's like, you know what would be a good movie? Like if bicycles could talk. And somebody's like, holy shit, that's genius. You want to help me write it?
Genius.
And he's like, no, just put my name as the story, like idea
He's
guy.
just sitting
Cool.
there. Also, he never eats. He just is sitting there sipping coffee. You know what I mean? Like in a quarter. I think that's the move. Yeah, I love that. We also have one more who contributed to the story, Jim Capobianco, and he's
Great
done.
last name.
I know, right? Like super cool. The Lion King and Hunchback of Notre Dame are
Ah,
probably some of the big ones that he has contributed to, but he's got several other credits, but those are the big ones, I would say.
yeah.
And then we're going to do our major cast here. We've got the awesome, hilarious Patton Oswalt as Remy. So
Prolific character
prolific.
actor, stand-up comedian, has been basically, if you can name a TV show in the last 25 years, he's made a one-off appearance. He's just everywhere.
Yeah, he's everywhere. And then obviously his stand up is great. So, yeah. And then he was in the new Ghostbusters, which I thought was a fun recent fact as well. So, not for
Apparently
long, but
he
he's in there.
okay, he also apparently got cast in this from his stand-up. Brad Bird saw him do a stand-up set
Hmm.
and heard his voice and went, "Yep, that's how I want this rat to sound." So, There you go.
Yeah, which checks out. I mean, he does a great job at this voice and fits it really well. So then we also have Ian Holm, who's a classic. If you don't recognize his name, he plays Skinner in this, Chef Skinner, and he does Lord of the Rings. He was Bilbo
Bilbo.
Baggins, and he also, of course, the Hobbits that went with us that as well. He was in there briefly, but some other ones that I think are cool is he's a classically trained actor. He's done Hamlet, where he
Mhm.
was Polonius, which always makes me think of Clueless, where she's like, Mel Gibson didn't say that. That Polonius guy did. So that's him. He was Polonius. You're welcome.
Uh,
And
I
then
feel
also,
like
go ahead.
I was gonna say I feel like I have to shout out the sci-fi stuff here because I'm usually not the sci-fi guy, but I remember him as Ash in Alien, the first one, and
Mm,
then also in The Fifth Element. So like he's got a little
hmm.
bit of everything out there.
He does. And then the last one I'll mention is From Hell, where
Mm.
he plays a super creep. It's really good if you haven't seen it. Anyway.
I kept waiting for him to do the Bilbo angry voice thing in this, like,
Yeah.
like trying to grab, yeah,
I think that's the moment everybody remembers of him from those movies. Like,
because
that's
it
just such a
scares the shit out
striking
of us.
moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then we also have Lou Romano, and he's our Linguini character here. He's done a lot of voice work. He's also been in the animation department of a lot of films as well. So I feel like this is a little bit more of a one off for him as far as being like a lead character. But
Yeah.
he did do a little bit of voice work in Cars and Incredibles, but mostly seems to be like animation department type of dude.
I also
So
see him in a lot of video games doing voice acting, and you can tell in this because the amount of physical comedy in this, where really it's just him making sound effects and like doing crazy things with his voice. It's just you can tell he's got a history of doing lots of just weird shit doing voice acting.
yeah, I mean, I think, has done a bunch of little things, and I wouldn't even recognize the video game stuff. Like, I'm just not familiar. So that's interesting. But yeah, we also have Brad Garrett, which most of you probably know from Everybody Loves Raymond, I feel like, or at
Or
least having,
Quiznos.
or Quiznos.
Freaking Jimmy John, or no, Jimmy John's, sorry, not
I was
Quiznos.
gonna say, is
I
it
was like,
Quiznos?
in my head, I was like, "Wait, why would they criticize Jimmy John's and Quiznos ads? Maybe they're just going straight for the jugular." But no, it's Jimmy John's. Frickin' Jimmy John's.
Yes. So he is Gusteau in this. And I think he has such a good voice for it. It's funny. But he also does some like other voice work in some other Pixar things like Finding Dory. And then just like a lot of TV, like guest stars and things like that.
Hmm.
And then we have the legend, Peter O'Toole. He plays Anton Ego, who is, of course, the critic. And
Mhm.
he's in, I have it literally in my notes, he's in everything. He's in everything. He's done everything at some point. Classically trained actor, was an incredible voice, but he has done some of the big ones like Lawrence of Arabia and
Mhm.
Troy and Sherlock Holmes, Man of La Mancha, a lot of Shakespeare. He's done everything, like I said.
Yeah.
And then we have Janine Garofalo, who plays Colette, which is funny. I don't feel like I remembered that because she does it with this very different French accent, and she does it, I
There's a
think, pretty
lot of
well.
that going on in here, and I mean, we'll get into this with the movie. I think for me, some of the humor gets lost a little bit by having all these people who are not French having to do French
Hmm.
accents, but
Hmm.
I will say she pulls it off really well. It feels natural. It doesn't seem like she's doing a stereotypical accent or anything like that.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I mean, I'm sure French people would disagree, but I thought it blended well, but I just remember it doesn't sound like her to me
Right.
in that
Yeah.
accent until you look up and you're like, "Oh, I kind of hear it." But anyway, she's
Mhm.
done a bunch of stuff. Wet Hot American Summer, one fun random one that I always like to throw in there is Mystery Men,
Mystery Men. Oh, was she
Billions.
the bowler? Was that her name?
Yeah.
Or
I
yeah,
think so, right? I think the bowler.
pretty I
But
saw
she
Mystery Men way,
I was
like,
gonna say it's been a
first one
hot
out.
minute
Yeah.
since I saw Mystery Men, but I do remember it being weird and hilarious. Billions,
Mhm.
and that was more recent, but she did a really good job. She's also a comedian. She just
Yeah.
does done stand up and lots of TV as they are wont to do. Then we have Brian Dennehy, who I always think of from Silverado. Like that is my vision of Brian Dennehy, no matter what, like Western Silverado. But he's done a lot of stuff. He did Cocoon, just like
Okay.
sci-fi. He's done Romeo and Juliet, the Leonardo DiCaprio version. I know I always say Leonardo DiCaprio. Baz Luhrmann's probably really upset about that. But anyway, that one. Death of a Salesman, which is a classic play that he did the film version, 30 Rock. So he's got quite a lot of range as well. Peter Son plays Emil, and he's done like some other voice work as well, including Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. which I sort of forgot about. That's kind of cool. And he also did Lightyear and Luca, which are Luca was like, I think, a sleeper hit. There was not as much traffic on that one. That one's actually a really good
I
animated
haven't
film as
seen that
well.
one yet.
It is good. Did you see Lightyear? Lightyear is also good. I like.
No, I have those are two another two that just like wasn't enough time.
I
It's
feel
just
like
not
Chris
enough time.
Evans is like the perfect Buzz Lightyear. Really, like it's
Yeah,
very
I can
good.
hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he does like lots of other crew work and things like that. But then I wanted to close this out with one of my faves that was mentioned on the pod recently, Mr. Will Arnett,
Hell yeah.
who plays Horst. And he's the one who's like, and I killed a man with
With
this
this
thumb. Yeah,
I also this
exactly.
is before he sort of, the last 5 years or 10 years, he's just had like a career renaissance of being in
Mm,
everything. Just his voice, he's another one of those who
his
has a very
voice. Yeah.
distinct voice. And he's now in all these commercials and he's in a bunch of different TV shows and he did BoJack Horseman, but this was 2007, so this was even before he did like Lego Batman and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So I feel like this was a weird point in his career where he was this I was like, oh, Will Arnett's in this, and he doesn't. I mean, he has dialogue, but it's not as much as I would expect if this were
No.
made
I
today.
think I forgot to look at the order of this, but I think this is post Rested Development, but it's pre
Yes,
Lego Batman's, all
yes,
of that. Now he's doing Murderville on Netflix, which is really funny as
so good.
well. But fun fact, he has been doing voice work for a bazillion years if you look at his history, but he's the GMC guy as well, which is probably one of his most
Mm,
noticeable voice work things that he does. And I listen to Smartlist, which we talk about on this pod all the time, as we know. Eventually they're going to sponsor us as well. But he said on that pod that he's been doing that for like 20-25 years. Something crazy. Like I did
wow,
not realize it had been that long. But yeah,
hmm,
very distinctive voice, and I think awesome voice work from him.
yeah. Everybody in this. I mean, the voice work in this is top notch. For as much as I critiqued a bit of the having to do all the French accent things, like I think everyone in this does a stellar job of playing their characters
Mhm.
to a T.
And what's funny about Will is that he actually speaks French, but he's giving a German accent in this movie because Horst is German. So I think that's funny. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
we're going to do a very, very quick plot summary, which is a rat who can cook makes an unusual alliance with a young kitchen worker at a famous Paris restaurant,
Okay,
which I
that's
like.
better than the last few that we've done on the
I was gonna
show.
say, for reference, you guys, we use the IMDb summaries, and
Yeah,
some are
yeah,
better than others. But I'll take it. It's not bad. But
yeah.
what I think is a really fun call out for this one though is the budget. They blew out the budget. It was $150 million budget, and they made 623.7 million. And it's an
Wow.
animated movie, and it crushed. It
Yeah, and
crushed.
a lot of that in France too. Like this
Hmm.
was at the time, I don't know if it still holds up, but the top debut animated feature in France the weekend that it came out. So I
That's
know,
awesome.
us in France, we don't agree on much, but I guess we both like Ratatouille. So yeah.
Well, both the dish and the movie. But I will say it also won Best Animated Feature Film at the Oscars that
Hmm,
the following year. So
okay.
pretty like universally acclaimed film. It's very highly rated. It was 8.1 out of 10 on IMDb, and then 96% critics for Rotten Tomatoes and 87% from the audience. So pretty highly rated across the board, I think, which is cool.
It's enjoyable. It's fun.
It's a fun movie. So we're gonna get into the nitty-gritty now. Look at we did it. Where we blew through that. That cannot have been more than 10 minutes. I feel like we did great. Anyway, it's been long enough, guys, that this came out 2007. So,
Right.
I think you've seen it by now or you haven't. So, but if you haven't, turn around, don't drown. It's spoiler time.
Here we go.
So, you know what my first note is for this one? He's
What's
like,
that?
because he's milling about. They're finding, they're out in the French countryside. They're finding ingredients and mushrooms, and he's with his
Hmm.
brother Emile and whatever. And he's smelling all these things, and he's talking about how great everything smells. And my first note is literally, my nose doesn't work at all. Like I couldn't do any of this. Like I would be like, what does that smell like? What do you mean? I don't understand. So he's like trying to describe all these smells, and I'm like, I'm not following. I've got
Yeah.
nothing. I feel like a meal in this moment. I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get it.
And I love how they channel that into him just trying to sniff out poison. Like they're like, "Oh, you have a skill that we can use and exploit. So now we're just gonna have you do this," and he gets bored of it, right?
Right. And they just immediately put him to work, which I think is adorable. And I love how he like tries to say something different every time when he's like, "It's clean, it's clear, it's clean." And he was like, "Close to godliness." And they're like,
What?
"Huh?" And he's like, "'Cause cleanliness." 'Cause he's, like, explaining the joke, and it's so funny. But I love that he right away, he's got this very independent mind from his whole colony of rats, and it definitely feels like he's the one oddball. You know, he
Yeah.
looks a little
Yeah.
different, he's a little skinnier, he's got a little bit different color, you can tell he definitely thinks differently, he's walking on 2 legs. And I think that they definitely show him as the one oddball. And the first thing I thought of was like, I wonder if this happens in rat communities or animal communities at all. Like if there's one weirdo, is there always one weirdo? I don't
I
know.
I didn't wanna jump into this right away, but I had a thought of, I wonder how many restaurants after this tried letting rats do the cooking to see if it really worked, you know? Does this
Let's put
really
him in there
happen?
and see what happens. I mean, listen, anyone can cook, says Gusteau. So,
Same.
but I think it's really cute how he has like just become a foodie in the middle of like how do you become a foodie as a rat in the French countryside? Like how does he and there's definitely this implication of the kitchen being this, woman's kitchen in this French
Mhm,
countryside is
mhm.
like a place that he visits a lot. And they all live there, clearly. They live in and around this house. But he's the only one venturing into the kitchen to like fuck around. And I'm like, did the TV like subliminal message him because it was always playing like Gusteau and cooking shows
Cooking
and
show,
stuff?
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
how did he get into this? I wanted more of that story of like, how did this
The
happen?
origin, yeah, I liked the line. You could tell the difference between him and his experiences of, yes, going in to try to get the quote unquote good food, as opposed to, I think it's his dad that just says to him, like, "Shut up and eat your garbage." You know,
Yeah, shut up
that's
and eat
his
your
outlet. He's
garbage.
like,
Literally.
we're rats. What do we care?
It sounds so Bruce Dennehy too. He's like, food is fuel.
I
Like
mean,
get,
Brian Denny.
Brian Dennehy, yes, sorry. But it's like food is fuel. Just don't worry about what it tastes like. This is just to keep us moving. And it's so funny because like you know that you know people like this. Like I know people like this too.
Fitness instructor, like the body
Fitness instructors, like
coaches. You got
whoever
to
it
know your
is.
macros. Food is fuel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're just like, I'm not here for taste. I'm here for function. I'm here for fuel. Like, I don't need something fancy pants. Meanwhile, I'm like, I would like something tasty and delicious.
Meanwhile, we spent 8 minutes talking about French fries at the beginning of this
Right.
episode. So,
Exactly. We're like, there's a very specific type of French fry. Okay. 100%. Yeah. But I just thought, like, also, rats are really smart. And so they make him seem like he's the only smart rat. And I was like, that can't be realistic. Like,
right.
the rest of them have got to be a little smarter than this, especially Emil. They make look kind of like little stupid, little silly. And I was like, my notes were like, rats are a lot smarter than this. Like, you can definitely like adopt and train rats.
Yeah, I
They're
saw something. I don't know if it's because of watching this movie, but I got like an Instagram in my feed, a post of somebody training a rat to drive like a little car. And it only had three controls. It had a turn right,
oh,
turn left, and go forward. And they were just putting a piece of cheese where like it had holes in the window so he could smell. And like it showed multiple clips of him like smelling the cheese in one direction and learning to turn the
oh
vehicle
my
toward the cheese. You
God.
know, they're very bright.
Oh, that is fucking precious. I wanna see that video. You're gonna have to send that to me later. But yeah,
Will
they're
do.
super smart. Like, they're just anyway, I just thought that was funny. But then I love how we start the film, like, it's in again, we're gonna make these phases through, we're gonna eventually get to Paris, which is cool,
Hmm.
but I like that we start in this other setting. I like that you get to see this big blowout literally with the woman who's in, this old lady who's fallen asleep and listening to her TV where they clearly live, and she discovers them, and that whole scene is wild, and there's so many like
Hmm.
funny cute things that happen. And one of the ones I really like is that they're talking, Emil and Remy are talking, and they cut to her perspective for like a split second, and all
Hmm.
she hears is the squeaking, like them squeaking, like she doesn't understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
And it's like a very brief cutaway. You can almost barely miss it. But I just thought it was really funny because it's like, you encounter other animals and they have their own language. And it's like, it's so
Yeah.
cute, that little transition. But then she loses her fucking mind. And
Right.
my thing was like, girl, you are shooting up your house. She gets a
Yeah.
shotgun and shoots all over the house. Like,
Like,
this
good
is
luck clearing
crazy.
that up with insurance, you
I
know,
know.
they're not gonna refund any of that shit, they're not gonna cover that. My other
Also,
question was, is this the most gunshots in a Disney film? Like, between this scene, later there's that really dark sequence where they're walking over the floor, the ceiling boards, and there's a
Yes.
couple fighting and there's
Yeah.
gunshots.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
this is a lot of gunshots
I
for a
have
Disney
that
movie.
note too of like there are a lot of guns in this movie
Yeah.
actually. It's kind of weird.
It's like,
Uh
France, get it together. Why do all of you need to own guns? Right?
yeah, Jesus,
France?
France. God, I don't know where you picked that up from, but yeah. No, I think what's really weird here is that this is also not the most effective way to get rid of the rats. I'm like,
Right.
not only are you shooting up your house and destroying things because it is a shotgun, double barrel shotgun, it is leaving huge holes throughout this home. But secondarily, like you haven't hit a one of them. Like they don't show her hitting a one of them. This is
No.
not
And then she
effective.
even runs outside and is like shooting him while he's floating on the river. She really hates rats, is
Oh,
what I learned.
clearly. Like this is vengeance. This is not about effectiveness. But even I was like, I like rats. I like all animals. It's very hard for me to find an animal I don't like. And I thought this was very cool, like how you get this like perspective into their lives or whatever. But then she knocks down the little light fixture
Mhm.
and it opens up obviously the whole ceiling of all the rats. And even I was like, okay, that's a lot of fucking rats. Like I would be I would be a little fucking freaked out if there were that
Yeah.
many rats in my house.
I also just realized we watched this and the newest Suicide Squad like 2 days apart, and that also has a large number of rats. So I saw these two different scenes of rats, just like a horde of rats scurrying across, the ground and covering it up basically with their bodies back to back. That was a weird thing to watch.
You were unintentionally on theme for the whole week. Look
Maybe
at you.
that should have been our theme for the month. Just all movies with rat. We could have done Teenage Ninja Turtles.
I
I'm sure
know. That immediately came to mind. I was like, okay, let's do it.
we could have
Guys,
done Rat Race with Seth
we
Green. Like,
we can make a theme out of anything is what we have learned. Like there is definitely
yeah.
a way. There are the movies for sure. Yeah, I think it's really cute how, they show them all like scampering, running away, and like banding together to get on the river and go. But it's really
Hmm.
sad how Remy gets left.
Yeah.
But it's because his own silly, stupid ass goes back for the book. And you're like, really?
Mhm.
This is the time to go back for the cookbook? Like,
Meanwhile, he's just been using his nose to cook the whole time anyway, where he doesn't need the book. He
why do you
just
need the
uses follow
recipes?
your nose. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And he upends the recipes later. That's a great call out because he
Mhm.
continues to do that. He doesn't really use the recipes kind of throughout, even especially that one where he's like, where Skinner's trying to trick him and it's like a terrible recipe and
Yeah.
he fixes it in real time.
Mhm.
So, anyway, yeah. Why are you eating this cookbook? I mean, I guess he needed something to float on. I don't know. Anyway, so
Yeah.
he gets separated from his family, which is somewhat sad, but also feels like it's definitely this like Bildungsroman moment, this coming of age tale for him where he's becoming the young independent young man in the big city kind of thing
Mhm.
because he ends up in Paris by accident. He discovers that, ends up seeing how beautiful it is. He's wanted to be here his whole life. Like it's just fortuitous. He didn't realize. I mean, because you think about it, he doesn't really know where he is in relative to Paris. So
Yeah.
this is a pleasant surprise. And he has to go through all these, kind of trials and tribulations on his own, not least of which is getting some fucking food.
I
And
liked that running joke in the beginning of him just wanting to eat, and he
so they
keeps I
eat.
was like, Are they gonna do this the whole movie? Is he just gonna wait, like, a week to get some damn food?" But eventually he does get fed, but I liked that at the beginning.
I thought it was cute, but it was also very upsetting. I was like,
Mhm.
"Can somebody feed the fucking rat?" Like, he just wants a snack. He like can't get a nibble of cheese. Like, what is
Mhm.
happening? And he makes this super cute little mini omelet for Linguini, and then
Yep.
he doesn't even get to eat it. I
Nope.
was so upset about that. I was like, somebody give him the damn omelet. But this is one of my big things that I want to spend a second on in this movie is the stealing of food becomes a big
Yeah.
theme. And I think what's like so high level, as we know, like Linguini comes to the restaurant and they run into each other essentially and inadvertently become friends because Skinner wants him to kill him and get rid of him. And he like
Mhm.
can't bring himself to kill the rat because he thinks it's an innocent creature.
Well,
And
also because it helped him, make good
yeah,
soup. Like, it's
yeah,
not an
it helped
entirely
him.
selfless, yeah, decision.
Well, he, like, has observed that this like, he's like,
He's, like,
"You're
smart
special
and yep.
because you made this soup, like, what did you do?" So, even if he doesn't have the current vision, because he does, they don't have the vision yet of, "You're gonna help me cook." It's just, "You're smart, you're special, like, how can I hurt you?" Kind of
Mhm.
moment, which is cool. But then the running theme is like, don't steal food. He tries to make him the omelet, and he went and just grabbed some herbs from the herb garden. And listen, I don't know an herb garden that isn't overgrown. People aren't using all of that. And he gives him shit for taking herbs, just a few herbs, like what, like rosemary, whatever, for the eggs. And he's like, okay, I'll buy groceries. Don't steal food. And I'm like, he's a rat. He needs food. It's a minimal amount. I don't understand.
Also,
And
rats don't have incomes, so how do you expect them to eat if they're not
that's what I'm
stealing food? Like,
saying.
they can't go to the
Even the
store and buy
figment of
it.
his imagination, Gusteau is yelling at him,
Yeah,
which is his
his
subconscious,
own rat guilt.
his own rat guilt. And then Linguini gives him shit. And then it's like he can't even have a piece of bread. Like, I'm just
Mhm.
like, I don't understand. He's a rat. What is he supposed to do except steal food? I
Yeah.
don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, it eventually, ties into that conflict later of when he does start sort of feeding the other rats and whatnot. It starts small and
Mm-hmm.
grows big, so it becomes something more. But yeah, you're right. It's very strange to even posit that as a conflict. It's like they're rats.
Yeah.
This is what they do. It's not stealing. It's just how they eat. They
I
don't
literally
have
put
money.
Right. I literally put in the notes. I was like, "Am I the problem? Is it me? Like, am I promoting stealing here? I don't understand. Give him some fucking food." Anyway, but yeah, and then I had the same exact note about they're running he's running through the streets of Paris or through the ceilings of Paris and sees all these different scenes which are all really funny. But that one like really twisty scene with them the couple fighting and then the gun was really
Yeah.
weird. And there were lots of weird little vignettes that they threw in, which I thought was like kind of very unique and interesting. It was like a cool move by Pixar, but I was kind of
Yeah.
like, it doesn't really contribute to the story though, you know?
No, it's like a bunch of and that is a recurring theme in this. If I'm being honest, I am kind of surprised this is rated as highly as it is and that it won the Oscar because I think it's very good, but I think
Hmm.
it's not even in my top 5 to 8 Pixars. Like, one of my issues that I had with this is I feel like the script itself is not super tight. I mean, there are some great jokes and
Mm,
lines in there, but for the most part, it's a very cute story. But a lot of the humor, like I said earlier, comes from visual gags, from like
mm,
the physical comedy of him controlling Linguini and him struggling
mhm.
and him making all these noises. Those jokes, which have nothing to do with the story, but it's like, hey, we need to punch up the script a little bit with some gags. So let's throw this in here. So that was just something that I noticed throughout was I was like, the story is very cute, but I didn't find myself laughing as much as I did at other Pixar films.
So we think Jan did great work, but Brad did not, is what I'm hearing.
Pretty
So
much.
that's
I actually wrote down, I was like, this feels like it should have been a short. Like it feels like it could have been
mm,
another Pixar, like a 10-minute short. You could have told a similar story. And again, I'm not saying I do not like this, but I think there's I'll call out a couple other things later, but the couple joke, I was like, that feels like something you'd see in an animated film from like the 70s or 80s, like a domestic violence kind of like, oh, but
that
she loves him still, like,
it
dangerous.
also felt a little weird, like maybe an unintentional indictment of like French people. Like, because
Mm,
there's definitely a stereotype joke of
like
like
hot-headed romance.
volatile, hot-tempered
Yeah.
French relationships, and
Mhm.
affairs and all that kind of crap, which is again, these are all stereotypes. We are the pod are not saying this. But I
Sounded
think
like
that
you were saying it though. So, guys, just for the record, Mackenzie is the one that said it.
great, great. Thanks for getting me in trouble.
You're welcome.
Appreciate ya. But yeah, it felt like a little bit of a stereotype joke that I was like, "Ooh, I don't know if this lands quite as well these days." I mean, this is a little bit older, but it's not that old. It's 2007.
Yeah.
So, I was like, that might be a little bit much, but I really like the story, but I hear what you're saying about how it could have potentially been a short, but I think it flushes out pretty well overall, but I do think that there's some filler there that does that for sure.
It gets stronger as the film goes on, but yeah, I think an hour and 50 was a little long for we talked about the last couple weeks how the just, hour and 20, hour and 25, like animated films, like get to the point, keep it tight.
Mhm.
This one I
Mhm.
do think it was a little lengthy for what the story is.
Yeah, I do think though I love Colette's little like feminist rant that she goes on.
Mhm.
And I
Yep.
think that's super legit. It's really funny. It's really well delivered by Janine Garofalo. And it's so funny but accurate. And she keeps, I think, her accent the whole time.
Mhm.
And which again flows really well. Like you don't really notice that it's her, that she's speaking in an accent. And I just love her, like, her levels in all of that. Like, it's
Yeah.
not all even. She has just this great delivery with these varying intonations and all of that. But my favorite, of course, is the, like, "Keep your station clear or I will kill you." Like, she's just so, like, ragey in that moment, and I love the visual of her, like, right in his face. And she's just teaching him the way of the kitchen. I
Yeah,
love that she's,
I
like, not
like
fucking
their
around.
dynamic, and I like that even though she's told by the boss to sort of mentor this kid, she gives him that attitude of, "I've been doing this for years. I'm constantly passed up." Like, it is a very, very well put together speech. I don't love as the film goes on. I didn't think there needed to be a romantic dynamic between those two. I thought it was going to be just a mentor and like a friend thing. So when they
Mhm.
kissed, I was like, "This is a little weird." I didn't even realize they were that close in age. Honestly, like Linguini felt a little younger to me, but, like,
Mhm.
yeah, just that I didn't need that. It's not bad, but I just wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, it's not bad, I agree, but I don't think you absolutely needed it. I do think it's weird. The weird aspect of it for me is that it feels like Remy made that choice for Linguini. Because when he kisses her for the first time, he's
Mhm.
literally controlling him. And so Linguini didn't expect that either. You know what I mean? It's like
Mhm.
he shoved them together. And then it's almost like Linguini's like, I mean, okay.
You
Like,
know, if
you know,
she's interested,
like if she's kissing me back, like she hasn't stopped me. It feels like a proximity convenience thing more than a this is makes any like romantic or chemistry type of sense. Because yeah, I did like the mentor-mentee relationship
yeah,
of it all. And I like to your point that she takes it seriously. Like she does lay the groundwork with him of like, listen, I fucking know my shit. I put in my time. I've done my work. I'm going to tell you the way that things work, but like I'm here to work and I'm here to like advance, right? And I've been passed over and all these things that are super valid, but she still is teaching him the whole time. She's
right.
genuinely taking an interest in like, but I will help you. Like, just know that I'm serious about this, but I will help you be successful if you care about cooking. And that to me is almost a little frustrating because of the lie, obviously, that he can't cook, you know?
Right.
But what you have to switch to there for me as well is like, well, Remy is learning from her. So really she's mentoring Remy, you know, because
Mhm.
that's something I did like is that they show him in the cap and the chef's hat, like paying attention and
Yes.
trying to learn and taking in what she's saying and being like, okay, yeah, that is different. Or, you know, he is learning from her how to operate in a kitchen, which he did not really know. He knew who was who, but he didn't fully understand the flow. And I think that's something that he gets to take away from that. But the deception piece kind of sucks, obviously.
Yeah, I like that you called that out. That's something that I hadn't really thought of, like, she's been teaching Remy, but on that, to pivot a little bit, I wanna point out one of the other things that I think causes this movie to dip a little bit for me is I feel like it needs more Patton Oswalt. I feel like when it goes to the storyline where and obviously we can't have him just speaking English to Linguini because then we would miss out on the entire he needs to control him by his hair and whatnot.
Mhm.
Like, that wipes out the entire plot. But there's just a chunk of the movie where I just wrote down, I need more Patton Oswalt. Like, his narration is so funny and he's so
Mm.
likable, and they do such a good job setting him up as being this friendly and curious and brilliant creature at the beginning. And then there's a big
Mhm.
chunk of time where he doesn't really get to talk. We get
He's
like a
not
little
talking much,
minor
yeah.
30-second self monologue in his head, and then until the other rats show back up, then he kind of gets. But I was like, that middle section I think suffers a little bit by taking away the voice of our main character. Little mermaid thing going on here.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think,
Spoilers.
like spoilers. I No, I think that's a really good call out actually that I hadn't thought about either of, like, he is the heart of the film and the funniest part, and I hadn't registered how much is him yeah, his silent in the hat, you know, just cooking and all of that. That's such a good call out because, yeah, you lose the benefit of him being even if there was, to your point, like an inner monologue or something that he could be thinking, even if it was like a running inner monologue commentary of Colette teaching
Hmm.
him, you know, that could
Yes.
be cool, like, of how because you see him visually, like I said, like, reacting to what she's saying, but you don't hear it, and yeah, that's you're right, I think that's a little bit of a loss for us.
And I think that's where some of that over reliance on the physical comedy comes from. This movie, it's strange to me because it almost feels like they figured out how to make it better as it got closer to the end of the film. When they start involving the other cook people in the kitchen more and they get more dialogue, the movie gets better. But it's
Mhm.
like during that middle period, it's just a lot of goofy physical
It's like
comedy, which kids are gonna
and
like, but
montages
yeah,
and yeah, like
yes.
there's a that whole montage scene, that is my one note that I had about
Goes
Linked
on
was
way
like,
too long.
that is a really long montage. Yeah, I think
Mhm.
that was a little too long, I agree. But I do love the kitchen stories, like Colette telling the background stories of all the people is so
Yeah.
fun and funny, like those little nuggets, like
Yeah.
about Horst, about like the other people in the kitchen, and I love like the fact that that one guy is like in the resistance and he's like, well, which resistance? Because the French have had a million resistances.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't know. Apparently they didn't win, you know? And it's just, I just love little, like subtle nugget jokes like that that are so funny, I think, that appear throughout. That part is really fun. And I like that community,
Yeah.
that dynamic, that mix of those folks, because like I have had a lot of friends who have worked in the restaurant industry. My boyfriend works in the restaurant industry, and kitchens, like they are a bunch of pirates. Like they have all been, and like that's what she says, like we're a band of pirates. And it's like they are a bunch of pirates. They all have crazy stories or crazy backgrounds, and they like, but who doesn't fucking love food? You know what I mean? And they all come together in this place, and you got to be hardcore to work in a kitchen too. So that's what, yeah, I think it's a cool dynamic for them.
I agree. There's one other, I don't even know if they're really characters, but there's one other sort of character related gimmick that I thought was funny, and that was the cutouts of Gusteau. I love that Skinner, as soon as
Oh my
Gusteau
god, yeah,
died, just
they're so
repackages him
terrible.
into like a hot pocket mascot, basically like frozen
Oh my
foods.
god.
And I loved the visual gag of him just taking Gusteau and changing him based on the culture, like the
Yeah,
cuisine that they're serving into the
yeah.
different outfits. But then when they started talking later in the film, I lost it. I was like, that's hilarious. Loved that joke.
Yeah, that one was really funny. I like Gusteau as his kind of his Jiminy Cricket,
Hmm.
like is really fun. I love that it's meta about I'm your subconscious. Like I don't,
I don't exist,
I
but
don't
you're
exist.
using me because
But
you need me. Yeah.
right. And so like I love that he like calls him out on that, which again I think speaks to how smart the rat is, right? Like he's
Hmm.
aware of his own little mini hallucinations.
Yeah.
But I like that gag as well. But I think we have to like before we wrap anything up, we got to talk about Ego. Like
Yeah.
Ego is such a dynamic character, and so like you obviously don't like him at first, and he's animated in such a way that makes him like this stark dark character that's obviously our antagonist, at least early on. And they do a beautiful job of like showing that in his space, in his
Hmm.
voice, his delivery, his acting, even though it's small spots of the film, is small snippets of the film. I just think he like steals every scene, for lack of a better word, every time he's on screen and he's speaking, and he's just so sharp and witty and like I said, beautifully animated for the character.
There's two, I have two ways of thinking about that. One is that less is more with Ego because he is used so sparingly throughout the film. We
Mhm.
see him at the very beginning and they have that. I loved the joke where they said, he took a star off of their 5-star rating at Gusteau's, and then Gusteau died shortly after, and as
And
is
they
tradition, they lost another
they lost
star
another
because the
star.
owner died. Like that's, oh my goodness, that's
I
a
wanted
messed up joke.
I meant to look this up actually because I was like, "Is that a real tradition?"
I felt like that was a
That can't
intentionally dark joke.
I was like, "That can't be real, right?"
Yeah,
Like, yikes.
yeah. But so I like that Ego, we see him in the beginning, then I think there's one scene 30 minutes into the movie where he's asking why the restaurant
Why
is
it's
getting
coming back.
yeah, when he already gave it a bad review, but then
He's like,
it's like,
"That was the final word." Like, I just
right,
love
I
that
already
of
said
like
it. They shouldn't even be in business. Yeah.
right.
But, like, I don't then we don't see him for a while, I feel, and then Skinner kinda
Yeah.
takes over as the main antagonist for a good chunk of
Mhm.
the film, and then Ego eventually shows up to sort of be the end all be all on whether Linguini is a good cook or not. So I go back and forth on whether I wanted him to be more involved, but it might be more of a less is more thing with him.
I think it might be a less is more, especially because I don't think you can have the Skinner situation simultaneous to
Yeah.
Ego. I think that would have been too much. And I do like Skinner as a character too, even like just as his performance, it's really excellent. But I like the way they animate him too. He has literal short guy syndrome, and like he has all the things that are in his head about that.
Yeah.
But he does a really good job with the delivery. And again, it's Ian Holm with the great accent and all of that. And I just love how they animate him when he's thinks he's cracking, like thinks he's losing his mind about seeing this rat. And he's like, but I must not have, you can see him second guessing himself all the time, but that
Right.
he's having this little like mental breakdown throughout and that they fuck with him. But it's of course not great when he finds out that he was right. But I just love the like
Yeah.
torture arc for him of
I
is
al
this real or is this not?
I also was not expecting the words "Welcome to hell" to come out of his mouth. Again, a Pixar movie, but he's putting him on the spot to cook the soup again, and he's like, "Welcome to hell." I was like, "Oh, that wasn't what I was expecting."
Like the vengefulness like out of the gate, you know what I mean? He was
Mhm.
just like hardcore out of the gate right away, even before he knew that he was Renata's son, he's like,
Right.
"You hired him without me." He's like, "We hired a garbage boy, like, calm the fuck down." He's like, "Mm, okay."
Mhm.
But I just mean, like, he already doesn't like him for just basically no reason on site because Skinner's an asshole. But, yeah, I agree. I think, like, Anton and, Ego and Skinner have to kinda be separate, but I love that Ego comes back in at the end and that then Skinner and the food and health inspector are just kind of these addendums. I love that they don't let
Mhm.
that just go unanswered, that
Right.
that
There's a consequence,
there's
yeah.
a consequence for this and it sucks, but the only thing I kind of don't understand about it is then they open another restaurant where he's still cooking, which
But now it's
in
okay.
in theory has to get inspected at some point
Yeah.
as well and literally has little rat steps. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't mean like, oh, we don't take the chef out when he's not cooking or something. Like, sure, you could hide that, but they've built it for him.
Yeah.
It's built with like little rat section and it's built with little rat steps to go on the chef door. Like, I was just like, how did they not get shut down?
My theory is that there's probably another unseen French Revolution that takes place, and now they live in a different sovereign nation where rats
Um,
are allowed to cook. That's my
oh,
theory, I'm sticking with it.
or maybe they led the resistance to do
That
that.
might be it,
They were
because I
like,
mean
"We have resistance in the kitchen, so, like, let's tap into it and
mhm,
start a resistance so rats can cook."
I
I
think we
like
figured it
this.
out. Yeah, yeah.
I love this theory. Yeah, we broke it. We've solved it, guys. You're welcome.
I wanted to call out, this kinda ties into that ending sequence, but I like that. I assumed throughout this whole film that the final thing was gonna be the final 5 minutes would be him getting unveiled as, like, the person who's been cooking, but Linguini would also become a great cook, and that's how it. I liked that they had sort of the big reveal 2/3 of the way in of Linguini getting the ownership of the restaurant and taking it over,
Mm,
because I thought that's how it was gonna end. I was like, "Oh, this is a cool little
but
wrinkle
they
of
already do
now."
it. Yeah.
Yeah, they do it there, and then they're getting more and more conflict between Linguini and Remy, because of, him taking all the credit and Remy never getting
Mhm.
any of the credit. So I liked that that was how it went for the last 30 or 40 minutes. That was cool.
Yeah, to your point, I feel like the story builds a little better at the end. I
Yes.
agree, and they don't do the thing that you kind of think is the foregone conclusion of this is gonna be the ending. Yeah, totally agree.
Right.
And but what we don't like about that interaction, or at least for me, is like how cocky Linguini starts to act in once he gets the restaurant and he's doing those
Right.
interviews. And like
Yeah.
that feels not only just kind of shitty because it's nobody likes that or finds that attractive, but also just feels kind of not right for the
Like
character.
out of
Like it feel
character. Yep.
yeah, it just feels like a 180 and you're like, I don't think that would be the vibe, to be honest. Them having some conflict over like Remy wanting one thing and Linguini wanting a different thing and
Mhm.
having different priorities, that jives. But yeah, the like weird ego, especially around the interviews and all of that, and like leaning in his chair. I'm like, what? No, like
Yeah.
that didn't really
Yeah.
fit for
Well, I
sure.
mean, for what it's worth, Remy does something similar, because as soon as he gets control of the rat mafia, he puts out a hit on the health inspector, and that seems out of character for me. Like, his first act as mob boss, kill that guy?
Which I love that they're like, "We're just gonna tie him up." Like, I don't understand what problem that solves, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
again, this
yeah.
was gonna come out at some point, but it's still funny, and it's funny to see him and Skinner end up in the cooler together, like, I love that, but I think overall, like, it ends on this really cute, sweet, positive note.
Yeah.
It has a real appreciation for food and the fact that, again, like anyone can cook, or those people can come from anywhere, as it likes to clarify at the end, and an appreciation for French cuisine and France and Paris specifically. I
Yes.
think it's kind of a love letter to all of that, and I think it's a really cute, fun flick at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. I think it for the year that it came out and like the stuff that's come out since, I think it's like I said, kind of middle of the road for me as far as the animation. There are a couple cool things that I do like visually that it does though. I really like the scene when Remy is feeding a meal and they have the screen go black around him and you can kind of see like the music starts playing
Mm,
and there's little visuals for the different taste buds that are being
flavors,
activated and
yeah.
flavors. I thought they could have done more with that because it ends pretty quickly. But I was like, oh, that was kind of a neat little. We talked about James and the Giant Peach and how much different things they tried in that. And
Mhm.
this one, I mean, it feels like a Pixar film for sure. But that one little thing caught my eye.
Mhm. I like that one. I like that scene too. I think you could have seen that recur as he's cooking, like, multiple times and have it be, like,
Yeah,
this is where he
that.
goes in his
Hmm.
headspace when he's cooking or something. Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah. There's also that weird visual of the store with all the dead rats and the poison and stuff. Did you know that's a real place?
Ew.
That is a real storefront in France. Let me get the name right, and I'm not even gonna try to do an accent, but it's Destruction des Animaux Nausibles. That is the name of the place. It is an actual has like I don't know if they're real dead rats or plastic dead rats, but that is a real storefront.
That is pretty gross, actually, now that I think about it. Ew. I mean, it made sense for the film, and
Yeah.
I haven't been literally everywhere in Paris, but I never saw that when I was there, and that sounds horrifying. Like, who would wanna walk past that every day?
You should gift them a copy of Ratatouille next time you visit Paris. Just leave it on the
Yeah.
storefront.
I'm going to Europe next at the end of the month, so I'm gonna pop over and I'm gonna send them a copy of that because that's just rude, I think. But yeah, so all that to say, I think this movie is really cute, really fun. What would your rating be?
I think, as I said, I think if they had shaved 20 or 30 minutes off of it, added a little more Patton Oswalt, not had as much. I mean, I get why it's physical comedy; it's a kids' movie, but for my personal enjoyment, and again, this is another one where I waited 17 years to watch it, so maybe a little this is on me. I still enjoy it; still think everybody should watch it, but I'd give it like a 7, like pretty good, but not my favorite, and not one that I plan to
Mm.
watch again. Sorry,
Really?
no, I had my
Yikes.
fill.
That surprises me. Well, I mean, I guess it doesn't that much, but I love this movie. So, I don't know, I just have such a fun time when I watch this. I know we could get more of him, but I love Patton Oswalt, and I think it's
Hmm.
really funny. And, yeah, I just have, like, a lot of respect for cooking and French cuisine in watching this movie, so I'd give it, like, an 8.5. I love this movie. It's
Oh,
super
okay.
fun. Yeah. All right, homies. Well, thanks for playing. Thanks for hanging for AniMay. We did a bunch of animated films. This was really fun. I liked this kind of
Which
like
did
shake
this
up.
end up being your top rated of the 4 that we did? Do you remember? Was this your favorite out of
This or
this?
Ferngully, I think.
Okay.
Ferngully might have been higher. I can't remember, but I mean, they're yeah in the same vein for me as far as experience and
Okay.
how much I love them. I remember all these funny lines, and I'm just like sitting there having a good time the whole time I'm
Mhm.
watching it. It's a good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks for celebrating with us. I think we'll come back. We'll revisit, like we said, some animated films that kind of like didn't fit in. We'll pepper them in throughout the year, but come back next week and next month for a new month and a new theme. We are going to kick off June in celebration of Black filmmakers, from directors, actors, writers, etc., to honor Juneteenth. That will happen in the middle of the month. And one of the episodes that we drop will land on Juneteenth.
Yeah, and we thought this was important to do. Like, I mean, again, this is a auditory medium, but neither Mackenzie or I are black. But we wanted to take a chance to sort of celebrate this, and it's not going to be the only time that we watch films by black directors. But we think
Of
it's
course
it's
not.
an
Yeah.
appropriate time to sort of celebrate that and to sort of look at things and discuss them. But we're going to say this on our socials as well. I know that a lot of folks will only listen to the episodes where they've seen the film already. And we're going to do a better job going forward of saying, hey, here's the 4 or 5 movies we're doing next month if you want to plan ahead, and here's where to stream them if they're already on a streaming service. So definitely try and keep an eye on our socials at We Drink and We Watch Things Pod, and we'll get you the list of movies that we're doing so you guys can sort of preview some of these before we discuss them.
Yeah, good call out. And I think the thing too to consider is like this is going to be a mix, right? It's going to be black actors, black directors, black writers. Like we want a good varied selection of these for the entire month. So we are actually just to that end, we're going to start ourselves off with Do the Right Thing, which is directed by Spike Lee. And then we're going to go into Black Panther the following week, Moonlight the week after that, and we're going to close out the month with Hidden Figures. So check all those out, watch them beforehand if you so choose, and come back next week for Do the
Yeah.
Right Thing.
And
But
honestly, I know we don't usually do this, but like, y'all, I just saw Do the Right Thing for the first time. It came out in 1989, and it is more current than you would believe. So go
Mhm.
watch the damn movie and come back next week and listen to the pod.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, go now, have a drink, and watch a thing. Cheers.
Cheers.